Hey cats and kittens, it's your midsole man, Eddbud here. I'm very excited in today's review. I can finally bring you my thoughts on a brand new shoe. I really enjoyed testing out the original Puma FAST-R NITRO ELITE, but there's a new cat on the block. We have the FAST-R NITRO ELITE 2. I've put 100 kilometers into this shoe and I'm going to give you my honest views and opinions. Thanks for joining me on the channel, people. It's always appreciated. Make sure you help us to continue to grow by hitting that subscribe button, but also giving this video a thumbs up like. Dankeschön. What an absolute banger. Puma sent this one over to me way before Christmas, but I've not been able to talk about it to you until now. I put about 100 kilometers into the shoe and got some really good sort of views and experiences. I've been able to sort of simmer all the views and opinions like a big broth, like a big steaming cauldron of borscht. Off the bat, this is the best Puma running shoe that's been released so far, easily. It's certainly superb with a maxed out midsole here, and it feels quite exceptional. Quite an aggressive shoe still, which the original FAST-R NITRO ELITE was, though we now have a full NITRO ELITE midsole rather than EVA section in the heel. My measurements are normally pretty accurate in terms of that midsole stack. I've got about 43 millimeters here in the heel and about 36 here in the forefoot. I have a weight in my UK size 11 or US size 12 of 273 grams. That's about 9.6 ounces, so it's a few grams heavier than the previous version of the FAST-R NITRO ELITE. So a touch heavier, I guess, than some of the other super shoes that you got out there, but there is a bit of a trade-off there in terms of performance. I'll tell you about that a bit later. Now, the forefoot width here underfoot is considerable. I got about 12 centimeters here in my size, and a typical Puma very narrow heel of about 8.2. It's certainly quite a bit wider than the first version of the FAST-R. Let's kick off this review with the upper first. Now, this shoe very much does remind me of a Puma football boot. I'm not talking about the Puma King with the huge white flap over tongue. I'm talking about the modern stuff that you might see Jack Grealish wearing. It's super thin yet very, very breathable. It's fitting, it's containing, and it's complemented by a mesh section which forms the tongue. The upper is really, really flexible, very, very light. It does have that kind of Vaporfly feel where you do need to utilize these pull tabs to get the shoe on, and once it's in there, the laces actually have a little bit less of a bearing on the lockdown that you get on top of the foot. Lace length here is actually pretty spot on. I think you can probably stick with the stock laces. Once you lever yourself into the shoe, boy is it fun. There's very much an AC/DC motorhead ski slalom vibe going on here. The heel's very soft. It is literally just made up of this plastic outer section here. There's no conventional heel counter or anything. It just completely compresses. You do get some quite considerable padding though around the heel, and it locks the foot in place. The actual fit and lock of the shoe is absolutely stellar, and there's some tongue padding just in the right places there to stop any sort of lace tension from getting to that top of the foot. I've had no rubbing issues, nothing whatsoever. Every time I've laced the shoe up, I've just forgotten about it. The Ultra Weave upper material here is very easy to clean, and it dries quickly too. I wouldn't suggest that the shoe is ideal if you've got a very large voluminous foot, but for me it's like a glove. It's like they've made it for me. It feels aggressive, yet it feels very comfortable too, and I certainly think it's a bit of an improvement over the previous version of the FAST-R. The tongue padding's just exceptionally well placed, but I do think that the toe box area is a little bit more roomy this time around. I don't feel it's quite as closed in due to the fact that the rubber outsole doesn't stretch up and around the front of the toe box area. So there's just a little bit more room there. I always remember that being a problem with the first version of the Vaporfly Next Percent. There isn't anything here though that I dislike about the upper. It is perfection. Super breathable and a brilliant fit. No weird lace loops either. It's just a standard kind of set of eyelets. No rubbing, irritation or discomfort to report so far after 100 kilometers. I'm going to give the Puma FAST-R NITRO ELITE 2 a 3 out of 3 for the upper. It's really something. Midsole, midsole, midsole now. This one is super forgiving at any pace at all. If you're running some very slow kind of recovery paces, yes, that heel section here is very soft, but when you turn up the pace, you really do begin to fly along. The shoe does make you concentrate a little bit on a sort of mid to forefoot landing and that sort of toe off section with the extended carbon plate there just creeping up and away from the shoe. Just gives you a little bit more surface area to push off on, almost like, I guess, if you were wearing some tennis rackets on your feet or something, like you're wearing snowshoes almost. There's just more surface area here, even in width as well. The foam is exceptionally soft here, and it gives me that same feeling that I had back in the Vaporfly 4%. It just feels next level to me, this shoe. It really does. The back now gives you some nice controlled impact protection. It's very soft. They've replaced it with that Nitro Elite foam, particularly useful going downhill or actually going uphill too. And I think the forefoot section of this shoe is probably one of the most exhilarating, fun rides I've ever had in a running shoe. The mid to forefoot softness here really does make a very enjoyable sort of feeling. It's especially good when you crank it up to like 5k or 10k effort, but certainly for me it could be a marathon shoe, certainly a half marathon shoe, absolutely. It's feeling good across any pace for me. I've tried it on all sorts of different runs, some longer efforts, shorter efforts, some intervals, repeats. 1 kilometer or 1 mile reps feel really nice. You've got enough there in the heel if you're going to slow down and do some recoveries in between. And running some sections at my perceived current marathon effort, again, it just feels like a really nice, smooth and controlled ride. I would suggest though, if you are not a neutral runner, then it could be that the heel wear is just simply too soft for you now. It might lack the resilience there for very heavy heel strikers. The shoe's very much built to absorb that impact and then kind of push you off forwards with the carbon plate. I do find that extended plate to be more noticeable on hill climbs, and that is something that I've made my forte over the last 3 months. I've found fitness, drive and endurance over hills has really gone through the roof for me, and that's of course really useful for some upcoming events that I've got. Blackmore Vale Half Marathon this Sunday. That extended plate enables you to toe off with a slightly more aggressive fashion. There's some real push off here if you want it, and of course the carbon plate does give you that nice smooth action. You never really notice the lack of foam that isn't connecting the two pieces here. All in all, I think this is a fantastic race shoe for me, but I think I can also carry on using this in training. I've got no signs of wear. There's no worries about durability or longevity about this Puma model. I think at 100k it almost feels better than it did when I took it out of the box. There's a little bit of discoloration here and there on the midsole, but I'm not really too worried about that. In terms of the midsole, easily the best Puma running shoe so far. I will utilise it to race in this weekend at the Blackmore Vale Half. It's got the feel of those early Zoom X shoes that were just really exciting to run in and fun as well. But it's also got the versatility and the durability to boot in the midsole. I'm going to give the FAST-R NITRO ELITE 2 a 3 out of 3 for the midsole. Nothing to dislike here in the foam from a performance perspective. It's time to talk outsole now. Get to this point with like a perfect score and you know Puma grip always delivers. So 100k, it's still really sticky, really tacky, in a good way of course. Great traction and durability once again from Puma. I've worn these across pavements, roads, concrete and even some light trails too. Very little wear whatsoever after 100 kilometers. There's a tiny little bit of abrasion here in the heel section, but it's barely noticeable really, especially when you're actually running in the shoe. And in fairness, you know, you should be running in your shoes rather than looking at them. I guess my only small issue here is in this forefoot section here. There's some small ridges and lugs. They're quite hard to clean. They do pick up some debris from time to time, but if you give them a good going over with the firm bristle brush, you're good to go. I've yet to receive any major damage at all to the rubber here in the outsole. I think if you're going to run on it in anything but loose debris, you'll be absolutely fine. Obviously with the exposed carbon plate here, don't go running with the shoe on gravel or something like that. That wouldn't be a good idea, but that's pretty much the same for all super shoes, isn't it? Like in the outsole, it works practically on everything I've tried it so far, and smoother surfaces as well, which can often be the Achilles heel of some super shoes where you've got diminished amounts of rubber. No problem. I have worn this in some dreadful conditions, a lot of rain. They got saturated at one point and it still felt assured underfoot. I think if you want a super shoe from an outsole perspective for training and racing, then you shouldn't look too far away from this one. There's no need to baby it and keep it in the box for those key races. So only scoring it down slightly due to the fact that that forefoot and sort of midfoot section pick up some debris. I'm going to give it a 2.9 out of 3 for the outsole after my initial runs. Time to talk value now. Puma have sent me this shoe for review, though they're not paying me to make this video. This one drops for £230 here in the UK, so it's about a £10 price increase from the FAST-R NITRO ELITE. I'm quite glad I've got to take this one up to 100 kilometers already and give you my views on it. I think with value, it's definitely tied in with durability somewhat, and the shoe's holding up really well from that perspective. Is it better than some of the other super shoes out there? For me, absolutely yes, from a performance perspective. The fit, the lockdown, and the just general fun nature of it mean it's one I keep grabbing for, and I have to try and hold myself back from wearing it every day. Easy to clean, very little perceived outsole wear so far, and I've really hammered it as well. It's not like I've babied it at all. It's gone out in some terrible conditions at times. I think if you're worried about the durability of that split midsole design, I don't think you should too much. Puma have been making athletic footwear for a long time, and that's exactly how long these will last. I think it's a really careful balance that they've got here actually, between having a really good lockdown from the upper, maximum cushion. They've taken it to that 40mm limit this time, which is great, but there's a still nice stable feel from that wider plate and sort of mid to forefoot area. It's a super effective midsole stack, and I think it now makes it a marathon shoe for Puma. It's the best super shoe I've tested out for years actually. Feels fun and enjoyable to run in, and that isn't always the case for those high-end super shoes. And they also get ripped up after a few sessions as well, where this one's even better than it was. As such, we have to take into account performance, durability, fun factor. I think this one's worth it, and it's up there with the Adidas Prime X Strung for me as one of the best shoes over the last few years. Standout, yes, there's a slightly higher price, but it's still less than a Vaporfly. I'm going to give the Puma FAST-R NITRO ELITE 2 a 2.9 out of 3 for value. I just brought it down a bit because of the price increase. Just wish it was a touch cheaper. Yep. It's better than the Vaporfly 3 for me, at least in terms of fit. Just more fun to run in as well. Easier to get a good lockdown than the Adios Pro 3. Better fit over the foot than the Endorphin Pro 3. I think there's a bit more mass appeal to this one than the Asics Metaspeed Sky Plus. More conventional on foot than the Endorphin Elite, and it's more fun than the Cloud Boom Echo 3. If I've totaled the scores up correctly, that gives us 11.8 out of 12 for the Puma FAST-R NITRO ELITE 2. It's as close to the perfect super shoe for me as I think I might get. Fun, fast, and it's really good. Let me know if you're going to be picking up this absolute banger for 2024. There's been some brilliant shoes already so far. Give me your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. When I was a kid, I used to love looking at all the shoes that were in the local sports shops, and this is that type of shoe I pick up and think, wow man, that just looks insane. The design, everything about it, it just speaks to me. I love the colourway, and the more and more grimy it gets, the better the shoe looks. How many running shoes can you say that about? It's just a thing of beauty. It's fantastic. Musical Interlude. It's a bizarre track that's basically been stuck in my head now for a couple of weeks by Jeff Goddard. It was recorded with Joe Meek back in the early 60s. It's called Skymen. Now, this thing just never leaves my head. I can't get rid of it. I've tried listening to all sorts of other things, but yeah, to no avail. Skymen follows a similar template, I guess, to the song Telstar, but Jeff Goddard singing all about, you know, aliens. If you're out one night with your darling, you might see them in the sky, and you know, they'll try and speak to you and all this kind of stuff. It's just totally bizarre. Heaven knows what people thought of it when it was released at the time. I think it was perhaps a little bit ahead of his time with all this kind of alien business. It's a really sad story about Jeff Goddard. When I sort of looked into it a bit more, he became very disillusioned with the music industry. I think he got a job like working in a kitchen or something, stopped writing songs, and he just completely left it all behind. Until one day he got a phone call from a music publisher, I think, to tell him that Adamant and I think it was Bronski Beat or something had done like a mixture medley type track that had sold like 300,000 copies using Johnny Remember Me, which is another track that Jeff Goddard wrote. And all of a sudden he had some cash coming in, and you know, he'd made some money, and I think it rekindled his love of songwriting, and he started to write some more tracks. but the people that went to the college or university where he was working, they didn't know who he was. They never realised he was a songwriter. Brilliant piano player as well. Jeff Goddard, one of my heroes. Go and check it out, Skymen. It truly is bizarre. Thanks for tuning in, people. Hope you enjoyed today's review. Help the channel to continue to grow by hitting that subscribe button, but also helping us on an ad hoc basis by dropping us a super thanks too. Give this video a thumbs up like. My name's Eddbud, and I'll be seeing you